Now let's come back to MySQL query browser and take a look at these tables that I've been talking about. These are the tables in the database. And as I've said, in the PICS table, we have all of this information, the name, address, and so forth, all of these columns in the PICS table. And notice that we have this ID column here, which I identified. It's a primary key, and it's filled in automatically. Now, let me look at the columns from user PICS, and you'll see this is a join table. What it is a table with very little information in it. It has a Facebook user ID, it has the PIC ID, and it has the ID of the record in this table itself. And we have automatically a last modification timestamp, and there can be a comment in here. This is the table that add remove my PICS is going to be updating. And we'll come back down here, and you'll see that I'm passing in the add action, the Facebook user ID, and the PIC ID. And that's what's going to populate a record in this file. So let's take a look at, and I will remove that line break. Let's take a look at what happens inside add remove my PIC. It has the same code that we usually have at the top of the file. And then we come down here, and you'll get very, very used to this structure because it happens in all of these files. We're passing in parameters to the file, the Facebook user ID and the PIC ID and the action, and we're setting them to local variables. If the action is add, which is what we do automatically after we've added a PIC, then we come down here and do the same thing that we did with the PIC itself. We check to see if we already have this record. And so we do a count. When you want to see if you have a record, count is the fastest way of doing it. It's a very, very fast SQL operation because it can usually run totally off of an index. So we go to user PICS where the FBUID column is equal to FBUID that's passed in, and the PIC ID is equal to PIC ID that also was passed in. So we execute the query, fetch the result, and we look at the count, which is row 0, and if the count is 0, which is exactly the same logic that we did when we were adding the PIC itself to the database, then we do an insert, and we set these two variables. Automatically, SQL and MySQL are going to supply the modification timestamp and the ID number for this new record. And then we redirect yet again to the Canvas page, mypics.php, which is my listing of PICS that I have added to the database and or inserted in my list of PICS, that little join table that just has user ID and PIC ID in it. If this is the else statement for the action equals add, if the action is remove, then we do a delete where the Facebook user ID and the PIC ID are used for the criteria, and we execute that query. And then we go back to a redirect to mypics so you can see where you are. Now this file will be used to add or remove a PIC, either if it is a redirect after adding a new PIC to the database, or in the user interaction where a user says, I want to select a PIC from the database and add it or remove it from my list of PICs. So this is the utility file that does all of that maintenance. And what we now have is the ability to add PICs to the database, and we have the ability to add or remove PICs from a user's list of PICs. And this is basically all of the database manipulation that we have to be able to do. What, you may say, is that third table in the database for? Let me log back in. The users table contains, again, the primary key, which is this unique number that is created by MySQL. The Facebook user ID, remember, that is the only Facebook information that we can store. Last modification is an automatic timestamp, and we can store the date and time when the application was added or removed, because that is not Facebook information. That is information of when an action took place for us. We may want to store that information. You may not have a users table in your Facebook app, but if you do, the only thing you can store from Facebook directly is the Facebook user ID. So the database side is now complete for handling PICs.